Chapter 19. It took several hours before Victor decided he should find out to what place he had teleported. He arranged the mirrored keys in a row and prepared to touch each of them. After 2 tries, he was able to locate row 82's perception key. He held onto it tightly and his eyes glowed. After a moment, he could see farm buildings around him. He felt as though he was flying around the area when at last he came across a home on the property. He looked inside and found some letters and documents. He saw that some of the letters in the home were addressed to Samuel Godwinson. Somehow, he had come to the home that the Soul Key bearer had abandoned to help Ethan McCarthy at his hospital. He searched for some time to be sure that he was alone, before remembering that the Soul Key might actually help him identify dangers from people before the Perception Key did. As he went to try the next key to see if it was the Soul Key, he realized it was the Key of Origins. He tried to release it, but instead, the world spun around and he found himself on the ground. Slowly, he got back up and looked at the Divine Keys. They suddenly each had distinctive glowing symbols. He recognized them as the symbols he had written down when tracking the Divine Keys in his own time. He wondered if this was how Lucas Flynn had seen the keys when he helped them track them down. The memory of Lucas quickly led him to thoughts of Jennifer Cedar, and the anger and pain of their loss welled up inside of him. He punched the stone floor of the room in which he was sitting to try and focus on something else. The pain of slamming his knuckles on the stone snapped him out of his link with the Key of Origins. To his surprise, as he looked at the keys again, he retained his recognition. He picked up the Soul Key, and a moment later he found himself in the Mind Realm. The blue tint of the Mind Realm flooded the area and began twisting the stone building in which he was standing. The foundation looked similar, but there was suddenly a spiral staircase leading up. He cautiously began climbing the steps as he listened for signs that he was not alone. As he ascended the steps, he heard a mumbling voice. At the top of the stairs, he found a large door and slowly pushed it up to get a look at who might be speaking. "Who are you?" demanded a clear masculine voice. Victor froze, hoping that he was not noticed. "Come up here and tell me who you are," demanded the voice again. "I can see you, so don't bother trying to hide now." Victor sighed and pushed the door up as he walked out onto the tower. The voice and the mumbling he heard belonged to a slender, dark-haired man who looked to be in his late 20s. He had on a colorful robe with a white t-shirt underneath. Victor could not tell if he was wearing shorts. He also had a thick, unkempt beard and bloodshot eyes, and Victor imagined that it had been some time since he had slept. "Michael," muttered the man with a frown of disappointment, "back to persuade me again. I am not interested in what you have to say." "I'm not Michael," replied Victor with surprise in his voice. "Okay, not Michael," said the man, "and I'm not spending too much time in the Mind Realm." "Maybe not," replied Victor. "I don't know." Victor's response confused the man, and he shot Victor a look accordingly. "You're not going to tell me how dangerous this is?" asked the man. "I don't even know how long you've been here," said Victor, "and it seems like as long as you keep away from some of those creepy parasites or from William Fine, what does it matter?" "William Fine," snorted the man. "He wouldn't come within 100 miles of my tower. Although parasites can be less predictable, you're right about that." "I mean, I guess you would also want to eat in the literal world, right?" asked Victor. "Neglecting your physical body for too long could be dangerous." "I've got a setup for that, Michael," said the man in an irritated tone. "A setup?" asked Victor. "How long have you been here?" 3 months now," said the man proudly. 3 months in the Mind Realm, gasped Victor. "Why would you want to do that?" "Are you really going to play dumb?" asked the man. "This may be confusing for you, but when you lose someone, everything that reminds you of that person is like torture. I am tired of the pain, and I am the master here. I am the king of the mind realm." Victor tilted his head in confusion. He did not know who this strange man was or why he knew Michael, but he could certainly relate to having a desire to escape the pain of loss. He bit his lip as he tried to avoid thinking about Jennifer, Lucas, Lizard, Sig, and the others. He coughed and wiped his eyes. "Actually, I understand that perfectly," said Victor at last in a low voice. The man turned to him with raised eyebrows. "This visit is certainly not what I expected," said the man. "Usually you're all about cryptic riddles and warning about how fragile the mind is or how unhealthy it is to stay here as long as I intend." "I have a confession," said Victor at last. The man looked at him with a suspenseful look. "As I said before, I am not Michael," said Victor. "My name is Victor Lee." There was an awkward pause, and then the man burst out laughing. "I don't know what your game is, but I'll play along," said the man. "Okay, Victor Lee." The man used air quotes to emphasize his disbelief. "I understand why you might not believe me," said Victor, "but I am telling the truth. I recently experienced a terrible loss myself." "Don't you have to have something before you can lose it?" snorted the man. "I had friends," said Victor as his voice cracked. "I had many friends. They looked out for me. They fought alongside me. They trusted me." "Let me guess," said the man. "They betrayed you." The statement caught Victor off guard. He wiped his eyes. "Well, I guess one of them did, but that's not what I'm talking about," said Victor. "Really?" asked the man. "I thought you were trying to say you felt the same as I do." "I thought that might be the case at first, but now I'm not sure." "That's actually refreshingly honest," replied the man in a serious tone. "What happened to your friends?" "They were murdered," said Victor. "They were made into human sacrifices by the demon worshipper Felix Light. I was too late, and I can't fix it. Even if I had the power to go back in time," Victor wiped his eyes before continuing, "you can't really change the past, you know." "Felix Light," said the man in a low voice. "He is one disgusting cockroach. I mean, all the scurrying in the dark and hiding from the sun stuff. Kind of ironic, given that his name is Light. Of course, not all cockroaches live in the dark. The guy who stabbed me in the back seemed nice with the whole find the divine keys bit and introducing me to the girl of my dreams. Then he stole her from me. But just like you said, you can't change the past. So it's best to just control the here and now." "Find the divine keys?" asked Victor. "Don't tell me you don't know what the divine keys are," said the man in an irritated tone. "No, I do," replied Victor. "But who was wanting to find them? Who stabbed you in the back?" "As if you don't know," said the man in an irritated tone. He took a deep breath and shook his head. "Actually, though, I said I would play along, and it can't hurt because he can't touch me here. His name is Peter Kingsley." Victor's face flushed. "What do you intend to do about it?" asked Victor cautiously. "Nothing evil, if that's what you're asking," answered the man. "Although I can't say I intend something noble either. I guess it would be most accurate to say that I don't intend anything at all." "No intentions," whispered Victor in shock. The man's loathing of Peter Kingsley, his desire to escape into the mind realm, and his lack of any intentions all made Victor feel foolish for taking so long to recognize the identity of the man to whom he was speaking. Joshua Beckman? Asked Victor cautiously. Who did you think I was? Asked Joshua. A million thoughts flowed through Victor's mind. He suddenly understood that in Joshua's time, he had converted Samuel's old home into a tower where he sought to escape the pain of losing Erica Lawrence. Though he had thought he was in the distant past, he found himself only 500 years before his own time instead of the full 1,000. He remembered how brutal and cold Daniel Young had been in his evil intentions, and found it remarkable how accurate the description of Joshua had been as the man with no intentions. It made him wonder about the mystery for which they had originally gone to the Eastern Shrine, to find out what had happened to the betrayer with good intentions. The thought that suddenly silenced all other thoughts was an inconsistency about Felix Light. Hang on, did you say that Felix Light was afraid of the light? Asked Victor. Yes, said Joshua in a confused tone. That's why he's like a little cockroach. How did he come to fear the light? Asked Victor. I'm guessing it has something to do with demon worship, replied Joshua in a tone that made it clear he thought the answer was obvious. A smile appeared on Victor's lips. Yeah, said Victor. You would think that, wouldn't you? Satisfied that he had his answer, Victor turned his thoughts again to the fact that he was talking to someone who would betray and kill Peter Kingsley. He decided that even if he told Joshua not to, his advice would fall on deaf ears. Informing him that Peter and Erica would get married and have a child might set him off. If he were again confronted by Peter and Erica, Victor decided that it was probably best to tell him to stay here in the mind realm for as long as possible. What are you getting at, Michael? Asked Joshua. I've changed my mind, announced Victor happily. I think you are doing quite well in the mind realm, and I think you should stay as long as you can. Joshua's jaw dropped slightly in surprise. Really? Asked Joshua. Of course, said Victor. You obviously are doing much better here than I expected. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I hope that you have a pleasant day. You too, said Joshua in a confused tone. Victor turned around, opened the hatch, and went down the spiral staircase. The pain that had weighed him down had lifted, and his depression had been replaced with optimism. He thought of Sig's wide smile, and could not help but smile himself. At the foot of the stairs, Victor's trip to the mind realm ended, and the blue tint melted away to reveal subtle reds and greens around him. He looked at the divine keys on the ground that he had left in his trip to the mind realm, and put them around his neck. Where to go? Whispered Victor to himself. I just need some space to make sure no one else gets hurt. Suddenly he realized that in the distant future, the very place he stood was deserted. He grabbed the time key and his eyes glowed. As the light dimmed, Victor took a deep breath and realized the air was stale. He walked up the stairs and opened the hatch that he had used in the mind realm. He took a deep breath as the air was fresher. He realized that this shrine had been built in an area that had become part of the hot zone. This would be a perfect place for mastering the use of the 9 keys. He already felt comfortable with Heaven's Breath, the Soul Key, and the Time Key. He tried to decide on what to focus next. Instead of focusing on a key, he focused on the discrepancy he had learned from his conversation with Joshua Beckman. Felix Light's fear of light was still a real phenomenon in the future, but Felix had exhibited no fear at all when he had butchered the other key bearers. Though he had never given much thought to Felix's abnormal phobia in his own time, and had initially only thought it curious that it did not exist in the distant past, the fear of light was what gave Victor his courage. After all, It probably would not have developed from his own choices, and while William Fine or David Sawyer might be able to do something that could cause it, they seemed to be preoccupied with their own affairs. Victor felt confident that he was the source of this fear. He felt confident that going back to save his comrades was a fate that could be changed with time travel. As he held the space key in his hand, his eyes began glowing. The worry that he was too late was replaced by the confidence that the time key gave him all the time in the world to prepare for every step of the fight with Felix. Though he had seen his friends being brutally murdered, he now felt assured that he could save them all.